Today, we're in for a real treat. I'm actually having a friend, a colleague. I met her in a consultation group, and she is another therapist here in the state of Minnesota. So today's conversation might get a little bit more therapy esque than my usual midlife crisis to a centered life thriving. But I promise you, the things you're going to learn today from Amy Halverson, licensed marriage and family therapist, are going to help challenge you to empower yourself. And you know how I feel about empowerment. So keep listening. I know your deep, dark secret. You don't like your life. You're a woman in midlife, and for the past 2 decades or more, you've poured yourself in to other people. You've poured yourself into your career, your family, and yet on the inside, you feel broken. And that's no way to be. I'm Dr. Natalie Marr. I'm a clinical psychologist and a life transition expert. It wasn't too long ago that I was in your shoes, waking up in my early 40s, thinking I've got 2 failed marriages and I'm a single mom for the second time in my life. And I just knew that I could do better, that I could feel better. Fortunately for you, I have about 20 years experience clinically. And so I've created a method that will help you learn to love your story. I know that the story that you're telling yourself about your life feels awful. And I know that you think that you can't change that. I assure you, you can. And when we work together, I'm going to help you to craft a different story, a story that you love, a story that makes you want to get up every single day. Amy Halverson is a licensed marriage and family therapist in Minnesota. She believes that we are all capable of change and hold resiliency within us. She has built her therapy practice around the idea that within the therapeutic relationship, we can work together to heal the hurts, strengthen your giftedness, and build a life around the values that encompass who you are. Often, our past wounds feel like they pull us back from reaching those goals. Amy is passionate about using research-based approaches like EMDR and air network therapy in her practice. So let's welcome Amy. Why don't you just tell me first about yourself? The first question that I have for everybody on the podcast is, tell us your story.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Natalie, for having me. It's such an honor. I have been, like you said, we met together in this consultation group. And for everyone listening, you probably feel the same way. But when I met Natalie, I was like, this is my life goal. This person is amazing. This is the kind of therapy I'm doing and want to continue doing it. And she's like the expert, right? And so I'm so thrilled to be here. So honored. So thank you. But yes, my life
You're
story.
welcome. And so kind. She's so kind, you guys. I love it.
Oh, I'm so blessed to be able to meet such amazing people in my job and career. Sometimes it's a bit of a dream, I guess, to be able to.
There truly is a quality like that. Like I some of the people that I've even helped on their journeys,
Right.
I never would have met them under any other context. And so there is just something that's really, you're gifted as a therapist. And I think I heard you say this in your episode. And hey guys, I'll put a link to that episode just in case you want me to hear me on Amy's podcast. But you said, like, we learn from our clients as much as we're teaching them. Yeah, hallelujah. Yeah, I'm learning all the time. And it's like, oh my gosh, I never would have run into somebody with that expertise or that perspective on life in any other walk
Right.
that I would have taken except for doing this job.
Right. From this like dual thing about being a therapist where you're isolated in therapy itself as a profession, of not being able to see other therapists and colleagues always in between sessions, or you might be working from home, but then also like meeting these amazing clients and being able to be on their journey of healing. It's such a We have a really weird job. Let's just be honest. It's lovely and amazing, and it's just so strange.
Mm-hmm.
So
It really
I love
is.
this kind of
It
content
really
so
is.
people can get a little bit more insight into
Exactly.
this very strange world that we live in. But okay, about myself, let's see. On my journey, it's always a fun question when people ask this, right? Like, how did you get to therapy? And it's like, gosh, good question. So I always knew I was going to be a I'm just a helping kind of person. I'm always the like advocating for other people, the communicator, the fix it, right? From growing up and just all those lovely things. And so when I started, getting all the questions of what are you going to do with your life? I was going to be an elementary school teacher. I was going to work in medical, but I hate a lot of science, which is really strange now
Yeah,
because I'm
it's not
like
going to go well.
like waist deep into neurobiology that it's like, oh, it just was the wrong, fit at the time. But so I just was looking and I had taken some psychology and I thought, well, that's kind of fun. And then someone told me, well, you could be a therapist. And I thought, I could talk to people and get paid for that. I think I could be a therapist. This sounds like
I love what drew you in. Oh my gosh, I talk all day. This sounds fabulous.
I can have conversations with people and they're gonna pay me for that. That sounds so much better than working. So like I grew up in a family that blue collar, like working in industries and I'm like, that sounds so much better than like packing tape. So and I had done some work in the schools and I have a huge passion for children and for teaching and all of that. But I had done some shadowing in high school actually of an elementary school teacher, a lovely, amazing woman that actually was my teacher. And then I followed her and it was such a beautiful experience, but I felt so weighted down by the programming in the system, right? Like you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't help in this way. And it just felt so hard that I thought, okay, there's got to be a way that I can do more, all that like I'm a teenager who just wants to take on the world kind of thing. So that's where I ended up starting. Still love and try to like volunteer and be a part of the schools today, but like in a different way, right? So then I started this journey on therapy and immediately was drawn to trauma work. I had even considered going to a doctoral program specific for like disaster relief therapy, which
really
is a thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
This was like when all of the 9/11 research was starting to come out. And so I was super drawn to all of that. And that's where I got connected to resiliency, which is the name of my podcast and just all of this stuff. And so it just really, I was blessed to be able to get this passion super early in my career life. And it was super strange because that's not normal for, most people. We change our minds like 7 different times in careers. And that's typical. And me, I'm like, nope, this is me. This is what I'm going to do. And so I just kind of dived into it and then learned about
what I think is so pretty amazing about that is you just went with your gut on something that like resonated for you. And so tell us a little bit about that, because it's this ethereal skill set that I teach around all the time, like how to follow your gut, how to follow your intuition on Learn to Love Your Story. And I'm just curious kind of what was your internal wisdom that led you to follow through with that? Because some of us kind of think that's just like that. I gotta not listen to this and I have to go with what my family is telling me or what culture's telling me.
Financially, the most appropriate or responsible, or, you can't fail, make mistakes. And I will say that doing this work now and understanding that as a neurological important piece of healing and being resilient, I look back and I go, wow, I'm really thankful that I got these messages in different ways when I was growing up. So it was a norm for me in my family of origin to talk about gut feelings. That's so weird.
That's beautiful.
Isn't it though? And that's something that I'm so intentional about passing to my kids now too, is talking about that gut feeling, which we now know is, our vagus nerve telling us and pulling all this information in, and you may not be able to verbalize it because it's not hitting our prefrontal cortex yet, but we still know that there's something that we need to pay attention to. And so I knew that young. I literally had a safety dad My dad
Yeah.
was Mr. Safety. That's what they called him. And he would sit down and have these like little speeches on a regular basis about, now, if you ever get this feeling in a space where you just feel uncomfortable, call me. If you are walking in a dark alley and you get that feeling and you don't ignore it, you just listen to it and go away. And like, this was a common occurrence in my home that my brother and I will, like, even today, roll our eyes like,
Oh,
yep, that's our
wow.
dad. But what a beautiful gift, right?
Well, what a beautiful gift. Exactly. It's
Yeah.
so counterculture
It
to
is.
American culture
It is.
to talk about that. So that
Yep.
is, I mean, it was a major gift for you. And
Yeah.
but I love hearing that because, you know, here's the thing, folks, like what Amy just said is I got this because my family of origin taught it to me. So from the ground up, my neurology says, follow your gut. But when I'm teaching you in your midlife to start to follow your gut, you have all of this other neurology that you're putting that on top of that says something the opposite.
Right.
So there's going to be always that tension, that paradox that you're holding, that all of my programming and conditioning up until this point tells me I should do the right thing as it is said outside of my body, as it's
Right.
set by my family or culture or society or whatever. And yet Dr. Natalie's saying now I need to listen to my gut, which is, you know, this is that other piece that I'm holding while I'm trying to do this. It's uncomfortable to step into doing something new.
It is.
And so it's really beautiful to hear that, like, this has just been second nature for you because literally you've only done it that way and we're taught to do it that way.
Right. Like I said, I was blessed. That is the thing. Thanks, mom and dad, for making that a normal thing in my life, which was not normal in their family of origins. Like I'm a product of generational rule breakers. So it's a beautiful thing, but that was something that gave me the opportunity then to follow my passion to then, you know, walk alongside others who are doing that work specifically. And
Right.
so yeah, it's amazing. But that's where I started, is listening to my gut and being able to go, that's not right, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
Because I know
love
things.
this. Or, that feels right. I'm going to go with trauma. Yeah. Like, let's just dive in, because that's a big subject matter to dive in the mental health field.
Oh,
there's some pop psychology, pop culture-y reasons why I think people are diving towards it nowadays, because it has become kind of, this sounds so awful, but like a fun topic.
Yeah.
However, when you really know what it is, when you're getting trained in graduate school, it can feel kind of daunting because it's a bit of a bottomless pit. There's a lot of things that we don't know yet. And so you're kind of stepping into, here's some tools while you build the plane and fly it at the same time with these people, because there's so much that's unknown and that you're just going to have to kind of feel your way through in therapy.
It is still very much, how do we even say it? It's like you said, it's an open playing field yet a little bit. And it is some pulp culture. Like I still hear so often multiple personality disorder. And I'm always going, hold on, guys. Like that is old terminology.
Slow your roll.
Now pop
Slow
culture.
Your roll.
It's very Hollywoodized. That's not, you know, these movies that you're seeing about this, that is not a good representation. Please be careful. You know, I can get on my soapbox about dissociation, how it's an ability and a skill, not a, you know, full on disorder, unless we're, you know, really on a certain extreme spectrum of, and even then it's a beautiful tool that you can harness too. Like there's all of those things. So yeah, when if people are listening to this, they're like, I want to get into this and do this kind of work that we do. Okay, well, do your research and please look at the evidence-based stuff and the neurology and the new research. I mean, talking about the boom in the last 10 years of the neurology research is just beautiful. I don't know about you, but I just got done finished reading The Angel and the Assassin. Have you read that one yet?
Yes. Isn't that fascinating?
Absolutely love it. If you are interested in this, take a look at that book. It's such a hopeful message, which I think there's a lot in our culture that's all about, look at all the things that are wrong and how we're ruining the world and all of that. And this one is like, hey, look at this amazing work that our medical teams and neurobiologists are doing to find out. And there's hope for even things like that seem so big, like Parkinson's or,
Yeah.
uh,
Or in our profession, it's what we've called, treatment resistant
oof,
depression. So it's like your
oof.
depression it resists the treatments that we have. This is not you, by the
Yes.
way,
Yes, that's what I
resisting
had such a hard
treatment.
time with that
This is
name.
your depression or anxiety doesn't seem to be amenable to the treatments that we already have.
Yeah.
This is kind of cutting edge on top of that we're looking at the immune system within the nervous system in the brain, which does seem to be an immune system, and
Right.
it seems to run kind of parallel to the immune system of the rest of our, for your blood and respiratory system when you get colds and whatever.
Yeah.
And it seems to be overworking or kind of overreaching.
Yeah.
And that is cutting off creation of new ways of thinking and doing things in the world and feeling about things in the world. It's cutting off the body's ability to make new neural pathways. And so the Angel and the Assassin talks about kind of some of these cutting edge therapies that might be able to bypass that altogether. Things like TMS, or
Yep.
kind of brains,
Transcranial
brain-based.
magnetic.
Yep.
What's the S? I can't
I don't
remember the
remember
S.
what the S
But
is.
look it up.
TMS
It's
therapy,
a new type of therapy that
ketamine,
I'm excited.
psilocybin.
Yep.
Yeah, some of those kinds of. So it kind of gives you an explanation of why those might help people who have depressions, anxieties, trauma disorders that seem resistant to traditional therapies as we have them yet. Right.
Like medication.
They might be responsive
EMDR,
to those.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to watch. It's really cool in the field. But for those, who are looking at this, just looking at pop culture and some of the movies out there and information, that's not a really great way to understand this field at all. It's way over exaggerated and dramatized for the sake of entertainment. I get that. But nowhere near, it's like looking at schizophrenia as something that's violent, which isn't really true to what research says. Same with PTSD, complex PTSD, dissociation. So just be careful of all those things. But if you're really interested in
it's true. But representation matters, right? Representation matters.
Yes.
And when the only thing that's representing it is taking something and skewing and distorting it for the purposes of entertainment, and you have nothing else to counterbalance that but some textbooks that you're never going to stumble into, that's the problem. The problem is that there isn't equal representation of what the whole spectrum of trauma and dissociation are. And that's really what you're getting at, is the feature of trauma-based disorders where people can, it's a magical trait that we have where we can emotionally separate ourselves from the experience that we're in. And when we're under chronic stress, that's what our body mind does. Whether we, tell it to or not, doesn't matter. It's a survival mode. So it just separates the emotions so we can still be in the day-to-day in our chronic stress and not feeling it or feeling so overwhelmed by it.
Absolutely. No, that's one of the biggest things that I talk about with clients when they come in is let's talk about dissociation. And people will bring in, well, what about this experience? Like, I'm not feeling my headache. What's that about?
Yeah.
Well, we know that there are certain chemicals running through your body right now to help you dissociate that so that you can continue working or do what you need to do. And that is a smaller form of dissociation. It's not bad though. Like, look at all the ways that dissociation actually is helpful for us in helping reserve our energy. It's really what it's about, right?
Exactly. Well, that was really fascinating and not the way that I was going to take us, but I love that. I do just love letting my guests talk because the conversations are so fun. And I'm sure that my listeners will really enjoy hearing a little bit about that. Are you liking what you're hearing today in this podcast episode? Oh, I am so glad. I love being able to really touch people in a place where they need the help, right? So I have two requests of you. The first one, could you just think of one person in your life that also could hear this message? I bet you could. And what I'd ask you to do is when you're done listening today, why don't you just take the link and send it to that person, right? Let them have a chance to also gain from this the way that you are today.
And then the second thing that I would request that you do is make sure that you're following me where you get your podcasts. Like, comment. I even on Spotify have questions each and every week. Use any of those outlets because it does help me help you. What I gather from that information is what you want to hear about. And then I make sure that these podcasts are relevant to what your needs are. But let me bring us back to women in midlife and just ask you from your perspective and, lived experiences and your occupational experiences, because I'm sure you've worked with women in this group. What are some common challenges that you see?
It's the programming. Hands down. I don't even have to think about it. It's all the programming around being a woman, right? And what the roles are and what that means in our world. And so before we can even sometimes work on like the traumas that we experience, reprocessing them or healing those or doing some of that other work that you think of when you think of therapy, it's really building up our own resilient resources that we already have to be able to challenge, or not really challenge, but walk around all of programming. And that is a lot of work and energy and intentionality, right?
So what advice would you give on how to walk around those things?
Slow it down. Slow the thinking down. That is the first step, really, is because we can't be intentional when we're running at it. I think of programming for me as a brick wall. I go up to it.
I like that metaphor.
Right. And it's like I touched it and it's not moving. I tried it again and it's still not moving. So now I know. Now I know it's programming. I'm not going to move the brick wall. It's cemented in. And so it's not about me changing the programming's mind. It's about me deciding what my values are, going back to myself and then saying, you know what, there's a path around. I can do that.
I like this though. So you're giving people strategy because you're saying slow it down. But then the next right step is, and now you need to figure out what's right for you. And then the next right step is problem solve how to get there. So it's kind of, there's a sequentialness to it, but slow it down is huge because you're absolutely right. People come running at that wall.
And I do it. I do it, right? How many times have I been bloodied by the wall? Like I run head straight into it. And that's part of me being a fighter. There's that fight, flight. I tend to fight. There are things, the injustices, the things like that. I just want to go in and be like, stop doing this and change it. And then I realize I can't shake the brick wall, right? Like, Amy, what are you doing?
What are you doing? You can yell real loud. It just bounces right back in your face. Like it's not helping.
It hurts. I remember one of the first times that I experienced this in my life, where I was intentional about knowing that there was a brick wall there. And it was, I was in grad school and I don't even remember what the thing was, but I remember my advisor looking at me and going, it's okay, Amy. If you don't get it this time, the world's going to bring it back to you next time and it'll hurt a little bit more.
Such good advice. It's such truth.
I didn't want to hear.
Don't worry, that wall is going nowhere. You'll hit it again if you don't get it this time.
Yeah, and so I guess that was kind of their way of being like, you got to slow down, Amy. This isn't going to happen today, and that can be so hard. That's so hard because I think women have such wonderful ideas and intentions and have so many gifts, and so when that brick wall comes up, it's like, but I really wanted to do this thing because it's so great. And I find myself doing that a lot. So I resonate with the people that I'm working with. Like, I get it. There's no judgment here because I run into that brick wall every day too. I have to manage my stuff too. I have to learn to slow down all the time. And I will keep having to learn that and go back in, take that breath, kind of build my own energy back up to be able to find ways around the brick wall, whether that brick wall is about, my role as a wife or a mom, whether it's about how I look or what I'm supposed to eat or whatever the things are that plague, because there's so many of them that plague us.
Because there's so many.
There's so many.
There's so many.
And so whatever it is, it's like, okay, that's fine. I see you. I see the brick wall. I'm going to stay over here. I'm going to draw that line in the sand.
Yep.
Go back in and do that internal work first so that I can
Yep.
build that energy to go around. So that when you said that,
Totally.
I knew that is such a huge
Well, it
thing.
is huge, and you can. So this is, I mean, it's so lovely to have a therapist on the episode because it's really highlighting how much I embed the evidence-based practices that I know to work in therapy into this coaching side of things, because all of us, it's a spectrum, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're really down and out, yes, therapy is going to help you, and you need somebody personally to walk you through that journey because there's just so much to it. But if really what you've bumped up against in midlife isn't necessarily a midlife crisis, I know I call it midlife crisis to centered life thriving on the podcast episode, but it's more of us just hit this point where we're like, this ain't working. Like, I am here. I see the wall now. Like, I might not have
Yeah.
noticed there was a wall here because I was working within the confines of the wall, but now I'm bumping up against it because it's not going to work for me going into the next phase of my life.
Yeah.
And programming and conditioning is what creates brick by brick these walls.
Yes.
So I have an entire online course just on that subject matter.
Which
I want people to have compassionate self-awareness, because I think that skill set, and it's more than one skill, it's actually two that I kind of layer with one another. I think you have to have some of those in order to really do the hard work of seeing the brick walls, because some of us still are a little blind to it. But I love your advice of slowing down, because part of what blinds us is we're just going to the next thing. Like, we just, that's one of the ingenious strengths of the programming, is that it has made women very resilient and very problem solving oriented. But that is going to be a vulnerability when you try to do this internal work of shifting how you think and believe and feel in the world. Right. So you are going to need to slow down in order to be able to do that. Yes.
And when we talk about it from, like you said, that evidence base, you're looking at the neurology of it and how, you really need to be able to reserve some of the energy to build the neural networks around something new, to shift what those craters that we have built by doing the same thing over and over again. And that's being human. No one is immune to this. No one's immune to that. So it's hard work, and it's beautiful work, and it's some days it's actually kind of fun. I think my clients will be like, "Oh, this is so good! Like, it clicked, and I feel that, and I can't wait to like put this into practice." And other days it's like, I hear you, and I'm mad at you.
I know.
I don't want to, and I'm like, "Yep, I get that. That's okay."
Yep.
Or the I don't know. I've learned in my job to love the I don't know, because that is the opportunity to take that space and time.
Oh, so pretty. I was doing a speaking event, and I was teaching about motivational interviewing to guardian ad litem staff. So people who are going to be guardian ad litems or support guardian ad litems in some capacity. And that was one of the questions that came up, is just like, wow, but like, what happens when they just say, I don't know? Like, you do the open-ended questions and you're trying to understand it from their perspective and they really don't know. And I'm like, just honor that that is an answer. And that helps you go back to thinking about it and saying, okay, I've got to, this is where focusing and motivational interviewing becomes helpful. I might need to get a little bit more narrow in my focus. I can still be open-ended in how I ask a narrowed question, but how I just asked it is too much. I don't know is their answer. They really don't know. You've just learned their perspective.
They don't have
so how do you narrow that focus a little bit, test the waters, and ask some open-ended questions, see if you can get some more information? And it was really helpful for them to hear that. And I forget, it's one of those things when you've been doing this for so long, you kind of forget some of the stuff that's just like habitual for me to think in that lens. But I don't know is a fine answer. It tells you a lot about what they don't and don't. I mean, like, they know something's not working. Okay. But if you ask them what they need and they don't know, they literally don't. So we need to get a little bit more narrow to get into what's getting in the way.
Yeah. Or like hold space for that I don't know. That is so beautiful. Even just the idea that, do you think at some point, down the road, you'll have an idea or thought about it? even just
Mm-hmm.
holding space for the opportunity can be
Yeah.
amazing work of literally moving neurology for yourself.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so
You're building a hopefulness, and you're building an
yeah,
attachment to a future version of yourself that might be able to do this work eventually. Today's you is I don't know, but she might know. And so at least could I hold on to that hopefulness starts to build and bridge the neurology to wherever that version of you is going to be in your brain.
yeah, I'll share here
Mm-hmm.
that as a therapist, I used to struggle so much with I don't know in my office because I would internalize that then as the
Mm-hmm.
programming of being a therapist. I therefore wasn't doing my job well,
Yeah.
wasn't asking the question well enough. I wasn't giving the right things. I wasn't doing enough if they felt they didn't know at that point about that answer. And then I realized, wow, what a leading question. Amy, take a
I
step
know.
back. This is not your expertise, right? Like you don't get to
Yes.
own what other people know or don't know or neurology that they have or don't have. That is their beautiful thing to bring into that space, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
that programming for me, that brick wall of the I don't know, for me gave me then this time to like sit back and go, okay, I need to be comfortable with the I don't know. I don't know why I need to be comfortable with this. And then, through Air Network and the trainings and working with amazing therapists like yourself and talking about this, it's like, oh, going back to that neurology, I don't know is a beautiful opportunity. It's a
Yeah,
beautiful
it is.
opportunity. And so now
Yeah.
when I find myself going, gee, I just don't know about something, I'm like, oh, there it is again, that gift.
There it is again, that gift. Okay. That just tells us where the growth edge is. It's a
Right.
real good indicator of what beyond this we haven't built yet. So, yeah,
Right. And
great.
then I can
Okay.
pull on that. I
We
know
can
that I
honor
need
that.
space around this. I know I need some time. I know I need to
Mhm.
slow it down then if I don't know.
Yes, exactly. So it's a really great rumble strip for
Yeah.
oh, here's where slowing down would be useful cuz
Right.
trudging straight ahead into the abyss probably is not helpful since I don't
Maybe
have
not
skills
safe.
out there yet.
I
Mhm.
love the rumble strip
Mhm.
analogy. That
I know.
resonates with me so much.
I love rumble strips. Love that. All right. So my whole point in Learn to Love Your Story, kind of at the heart of it, is really to empower women. I want women to step into their own agency, their own power, and design lives they want to be living in right now. Like take what's here and love it,
Yeah.
not wait to arrive at the other side, even of this wall, right? Not link themselves to their happiness to having to arrive in an outcome, but being able to love the version of themselves that they're in. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, any thoughts on how women can cultivate that, how they can build self-confidence, self-empowerment, how they can see their own autonomy?
Uh, that is great work, and it is slow work, and I think it's work
Mm-hmm.
that it's never ending work, for us as women who will
Yeah.
constantly be around the programming and things. Uh, but I think for me, the one thing that came up as you're talking about that is really not just slowing it down, not just, the hope for the future kind of stuff, but the gratefulness work, right? Like,
Mm.
and I find that today, like I work really hard now to not watch the news, right? And to not
Mm-hmm.
I used to love
I'm
horror
with you
movies.
100%.
I used to watch horror movies. I loved those, but now I don't. And part of it is because I'm now intentional about not surrounding myself with those messaging, you know,
Yes.
and stealing that hopefulness because it takes away from the values that I have and I want to grow and I want to cultivate
Right.
today. And so it's just, getting away from that fear-based anxiety and going back to, okay, who am I? What are my values? How do I want to walk that? How do I want to share that? How do I want to grow that in my own family? And so
Yeah.
it's protecting myself
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
practicing, looking at the beauty, the
Mm-hmm.
the love around the care. And it's not about, at first it was, but is this ignorance, right? Not watching the news or doing those things. There's a little bit of that programming there of
Yeah.
making sure that I was informed and things like that. But I find I get informed no matter what anyway.
I,
People will
it's
bring it to me.
truly, there's no way that you're in this world where everything is right here
Yeah.
gonna not get informed in some capacity, right? And I really honor, there's two things you're doing here. You're really coming at it from a compassionate lens. You're really caring and nurturing towards yourself and seeing yourself as the finite resource that we are, because humans are finite. We can't, we're not omnipotent. We can't go everywhere. I know women think that they can be super women.
Or
And
told that they're
honestly,
supposed to.
honestly, I have seen some women really stretch that and are doing many things, and you still are a finite resource. And so you also are going back to using boundaries as a form of self-care,
Yeah.
which I don't think that people really recognize as such a powerful form of self-care. In my opinion, there's two categories in self-care: things that restore or replenish, and things that shore up and boundary. And so you're really kind of, this is a compassionate action to kind of set space for what gets to come in and what doesn't get to come in.
Yeah.
But it's using a boundary to do that kind of self-care. I love that.
Yeah, I think it's a great tool when you're aware of that option, because again, like there's no judgment around this. Like we are all told to do these things to be a certain way. And so once you go, okay, but it's not working, right? And I'm finding it's increasing my anxiety or my capacity to be who I am, then we can do that work to do something different. And so this was one, and it seems somewhat simple. It's not, but it seems kind of simple to cut some boundaries, right?
Yeah.
But it's also then, if I'm setting those boundaries, what am I doing with that time and space of those boundaries? And
Right.
it's building up those things around me, and it's an everyday choice. Like,
I'm just so grateful that you are a loyal listener and that what I'm delivering here is something that you want to be listening to each and every week. There are just other ways that you can be working with me through learntoloveyourstory.com, and I want to make sure that you know what those are. Now, for starters, all of these are links that you would find in the notes for every single podcast. And if you found me in a post on learntoloveyourstory.com, all of these links are there as well. But there are 3 ways that you can work with me. The first, and the one that I really strongly recommend, is join my Facebook group, join my community. This is a place where we can all talk with one another about what you're hearing me put out on podcasts, write in my blogs, and you really get some support, some community around making change, working towards that centered life thriving that you want. The second thing is I have a whole set of courses online, all there, right there for you, that will teach you and walk you through with workbooks, with guided meditations. So if you haven't seen that, you should at least go over and browse. And then my last and my favorite way is to meet with you one-on-one. I do a free consultation for an entire hour. It's called a midlife valuation. And that's what we're going to do. Look at the value of your midlife. We're going to compare that to the goals that you have for yourself. And we're going to help you come up with a plan where there's gaps there. And it's all free to you. So these are the 3 ways to get started working with me. In another way, if you're loving what you're hearing on the podcast.
I think going back to the pulp culture stuff, like the positive psychology, that's not what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, no.
Like I get that there's some overlap there, and when I talk about this, people will go, okay, but I can't just pretend everything's happy all the time. No, that's not.
No.
I don't feel that it's always happy when I don't watch the news, because there's always stuff coming and always stuff that I'm dealing with, and I'm not ignoring that. I'm just saying this is my capacity. I recognize that, and I'm going to practice what I can to compassionately bring my energy back so that I can be who I am in my values.
No, and I think you said early on, gratefulness practice is really one of the ways to do that. And you're absolutely right, because the core of gratefulness is not to find things to be happy for, right? That's that external pursuit. It's to look at what's already here and find gratefulness within what's here. And so that means if life feels really stressful and like a shit show right now, there's still something in there to be grateful for, because always that's the paradox of humanity, that both are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
One might be much louder and more in our face than the other,
Right.
but they're all still there. And so there's still something to be grateful for, even in the toughest of our moments.
Yeah. So like what that looks like for a lot of women in midlife is going, okay, I see the brick wall over there. It's not that it doesn't exist. It's doing its thing. It's still there. Or a tornado. For some, it feels more like a tornado that tries to suck you back in, right? I get that. I see those all the time. I see it. I drew my line in the sand of where that boundary was, and I am still here. I still carry all of these beautiful and amazing things, and have been a part of these beautiful and amazing things, and I can be, recognize blessings and gratefulness in my space, not ignoring the tornado. Like it's that holding both.
Right? Yes, absolutely.
You said two sides of the coin, holding both. Those are very advanced developmental abilities that we have, and something that takes time to grow that. So like the first time you start thinking about this, it's not going to be the easiest thing to do. And that's okay.
No. That's okay. It's
effortful,
and you'll get up and fall down and get up and fall down as you use these new skills.
All the time.
That's just that's how we learn things. That's just, we need some guardrails, and over time we learn how to balance. So yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Amy. It was a pleasure to have you on. Where can my listeners find you?
Right. Good question. So I am starting this podcast, Resilient Waters, Healing in the 10,000 Lakes. You'll find it at resilientwaterscounseling.com. And then also it'll be on all the places you get podcasts. So you can check me out there. I'm also, my private practice is through Northwinds Counseling Services in Rogers, Minnesota. So you can look up our website, northwindscounselingservices.com. Check me out there. I'm sure you'll link all those things in the description from today. And
I will.
But yeah,
of course.
That's
you'll be able to find Amy in all of these places, I promise. But I would definitely look up, what is it? Resilient Waters, Healing in the 10,000 Lakes. I love that title. That's so cool.
Very
which is where both of you and I practice in Minnesota. And so but it's such a good idea. You guys, you get to meet therapists essentially and hear from the lion's mouth what they do for a living. And I think this is such a gift to the world right now, because people are accessing services, but don't really know what they don't know and don't know what they need. And so it really is kind of this personal conversation you get to kind of listen to and get to know, ooh, that's what I want. And so if I can't get it from that person, that's fine. But now I know what I'm looking for when I go into the abyss of, there are 50 providers in your area that take your insurance or whatever. Like, you're like, oh my God, how do I even weed through this?
It's a very difficult process. And so the more information we can get out there, the better, because I also know too that not everyone has openings, there's wait lists out there. And so they're, like you, Natalie, provide different types of services to clients in addition to, so there's options. And I just want people to know what their options are.
Yeah.
So,
I love
thank
that.
you so much for
You are so welcome. Thank you for being on. I hope that we get to have you again, because honestly, this was a really fun conversation. So I might invite you back sometime. I know this. We do talk for hours, so I know this to be true. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Conversation, just fantastic. I love Amy. She and I honestly could talk for hours. So there will probably be a sequel to this, or many sequels to this. And as we mentioned in my podcast, I am actually guesting on her new podcast. So if that's aired by now, I'll make sure that is in the notes before this gets posted. But if not, I'll make sure that if you're following me on all of my social media feeds, you can listen to that as well. I hope that what you heard today really helped you want to step into your own power and gave you some ideas of how you might do that, how you might find yourself here. And that helps you move into learning to love your story as it is, right? See the gifts that are here. That's really what Amy was pushing for us, and find our centered life, thriving. All right. I just wanted to take a minute and thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this podcast even a thing. It's being downloaded all over the world, which really amazes me, but it also warms my heart because I felt like this is the kind of information that women in their 40s and 50s and 60s need to start hearing. We need to get a fire lit under us, right? But we also need to know how to go in the right direction. And it's hard when you hit midlife and it feels like life is just not clicking. I want to help you have a centered life, to feel like you're thriving and that you love every minute of your life as it is right now. And I promise you, you really can do that. And I am so happy to have you here. So I just wanted you to hear that. Be sure that you're following me in wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss when I drop a new one. And also like and comment. I do listen. If you've commented on these podcasts, you'll see that I start feeding you more information about those podcasts. All right, so I'm adding a little addition here. It's the legal stuff. Just so you're aware, nothing in any of these podcasts constitutes actual psychotherapy. Yes, I am a licensed clinical psychologist in the state of Minnesota, but everything here is just educational in nature and is a suggestion of things that you could be doing in your own life to learn how to love the life that you're in instead of waiting for a life that you're dreaming of to come towards you. So just remember, this is not therapy. And if ever you need any resources for mental health, look in my notes and I'll always have a little blurb at the bottom where you can click on a link and get those services for yourself.